Hey everybody, you join me today at a site that's a little bit out of town. It's a site that I've been to several times, but not for many a year, and it has some significance to both Harry and myself. Harry had it as an important site on both his Glasgow network and also his earlier book Forgotten Footsteps. And it was that earlier book Forgotten Footsteps that actually inspired me to make myself a pair of dowsing rods from some old coat hangers and a couple of pen tubes, and I cycled out here on my bike and proved to myself that I could successfully dowse. This is Bar Hill Roman Fort. There used to be an old sign at the entrance to the path here which said Bar Hill Fort with an arrow and a quarter of a mile. It was one of those old white enamel signs with the blue lettering, and that's fooled many a person who's decided to come up here, because it's considerably more than a quarter of a mile, near to half a mile, possibly even a kilometre I would say. Now, the Antonine Wall was built by the Romans across the narrowest part of Britain, which is between the Forth and the Clyde, around about the years between 140 and 142, and it was only actually in use for less than 20 years before they packed up and headed south again. And the general consensus of that is that the northern tribes were just not interested in dealing with the Romans and chased them off. So here's a little bit of the wall you can just see here. I'm looking down into the vallum, or the ditch here, and just the other side there you can see the raised bank. That would be the foundations of the wall. Bar Hill is actually the highest point on the Antonine Wall, and it's a site of interest not only to Harry and the Romans. It was also used by the Druids, because underlying the fort is Castle Hill. The Romans used to talk of this Druid grove called Medionemeton, which is Harry thought was this site here. The Antonine Wall, unlike its southern counterpart Hadrian's Wall, was built of turf mostly. There was a stone foundation laid, and the walls were built up with turf, and there's probably a wooden palisade on top of that. Something you're seeing much more of these days. No metal detecting. Here we are coming up into the fort, and this bit on the back of the hill here was the officers' quarters. It's quite unusual as Roman forts go here, because it was actually set back about 30 or 40 metres from the wall itself. There is a spring over in the corner of the woods here, and also there's a well sunk in the fort, also over here. The well itself actually is some 13 metres deep. I think it's 47 feet, and you can see the water is actually quite near the top, and we're always on the top of a hill here, so it's a very good artesian well pressure. And this is where I made myself some homemade dowsing rods. Came up and I dowsed around the well here to see if I could find where the spring feeding it was coming from. So let's see if I can do that again now. This is the bathhouse, which is down the front side of the hill, and we're looking at a bit of the hypocaust here, where they would pump the hot steam through. Now I actually dowsed, there was a channel coming from that well and it comes down into this bathhouse, and that's how I proved to myself that I was successfully dowsing, just by following the line of that watercourse. And this, as you can see, is a drain. What can we tell you? So, just thought I'd read you a bit from Forgotten Footsteps while we're here. Harry writes, one of the great unsolved mysteries of British archaeology is the whereabouts of the lost Druid sanctuary of Medionemeton. It is said by a Roman chronicler to be situated in that part of Scotland where the country is narrowest from sea to sea, obviously the isthmus between the rivers Forth and Clyde. And at present the only sanctuary known in this area is Cairnpapple Hill, and because of this, archaeologists, he's talking about Piggott here, occasionally suggested that Cairnpapple is in fact Medionemeton. The name Medionemeton is derived from two Gallo-Brittonic words, medio meaning middle, and nemeton, a sacred grove or sanctuary. Cairnpapple Hill is 6 miles from the Firth of Forth and over 30 miles from the Clyde estuary. It is difficult to see how it could be the middle sanctuary. There's also the fact that Druid sanctuaries were invariably set in forest clearings, and as anyone who's been to Cairnpapple will know, it could hardly be called a forest clearing. It has long been one of my theories that if Medionemeton is ever found, it will be somewhere in the vicinity of a ley line crossroads. Stonehenge and Cairnpapple are on prehistoric intersections, so perhaps Medionemeton is too. In my own unsolicited opinion, the only logical site for Medionemeton is Castle Hill, 200 metres north-east of Bar Hill Roman Fort. It is a natural forest clearing surrounded by trees and overlooks an important ley line crossroads. The Antonine Wall runs close by, and significantly, for an unknown reason at an unknown date, the Romans are believed to have destroyed the ramparts of Castle Hill and reduced them to terraces. Castle Hill is higher than Bar Hill, and from its summit both the Forth and Clyde can be seen on a clear day. It is 14 miles from the Firth of Forth and 15 or less the point where the Clyde met the sea in ancient times. If there was ever a middle sanctuary in Scotland, there could be no better site for it than Castle Hill. Graham Robb, in his book The Ancient Path, demonstrates from the Roman survey that Bar Hill, this site, is actually bang in the middle of the Antonine Wall. By distance, it's exactly halfway along the wall. So what better place to have the middle sanctuary in this lovely piece of woodland where the Roman fort is. Bar Hill Roman Fort was built around the year AD 142 during the reign of Antonius Pius, yet unlike many forts along the wall, it was not on the wall itself, but about 30 metres south of it. And the complex included barracks, a headquarters building, latrines, a bathhouse, commander's house, and likely held around 500 soldiers at any one time. The 13-metre well was situated in the centre of the site, and following the Romans' departure, many threw possessions they did not wish to take with them into it. And in it were found a wooden comb, buckets, nails, pieces of stone columns, and shoes for men, women and children. Anyway, that's what Harry has to say. There are two main lays of Harry's that he mentions here. One goes up through Carron Fords up to Stirling Castle, and it goes south towards through Proven Hall, Tarmile Fords over to Drumduff Hill. And there's a sort of roughly east-west one which comes from Duncolm, Harry's favourite hill in the Kilpatrick Hills, through Mugdock Castle, and over to the east it runs through Cockleroy Hill Fort over to Arthur's Seat. Yeah, so it is a little bit on the windy side today, so I hope you can hear me okay here. Just walking away from the bathhouse, and I'm going over to the older part of this complex, which is the Castle Hill Fort. And you can feel the change in atmosphere as we walk through the woods here towards Castle Hill. Things are much calmer, and there's a slight sense of anticipation, which is, to me, is always a sense that there's something a little bit spooky. There's a spooky atmosphere about the place. And here is the big lump that is Castle Hill. Now, most people think that the Romans built the Antonine Wall to subdue the inhabitants, the Picts, the Caledonians, that were north of the wall. But the Romans were actually up as far as Aberdeen. This is not their front line of defence. There was another line of forts that ran up from Crieff all the way up to Stonehaven almost. So it's clear they did have some sort of relationship, and there was a lot of trading that probably went on. And I'm intrigued by the fact that this is the narrowest part of Britain between the Forth and the Clyde here. So I'm just wondering if this is more of a route so they could get goods, they could ship them up the west coast by sea and bring them in at Glasgow, and then carry them over this land route over to the east coast, where they could then put them on ships and sail further north. But I mean, they didn't explore all of Scotland, so the story that this is where they stopped is simply not true. They weren't all over the place beyond this. There's Roman forts been found up as far as Inverness and beyond, and certainly even mapped the whole of the north coast of Scotland. So yeah, I do wonder about that. I don't think there's enough evidence to say that this was just built as a defensive wall and they abandoned it because of the ferocity of the tribes. I think they built this for a very definite purpose, and then when they finished using it, they had no further need of it, so they left again. Could be wrong. I'm not a historian, I'm just an amateur researcher, but that's my feeling on these things. So this is the east gate of the fort, and we're looking down the military way here towards Croy. So if you're coming from the Croy direction, this is the way you will approach. So this military way comes right into the fort here. It's quite a way back from the wall itself. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that brief excursion into Roman Scotland, and Druid Scotland in fact. Harry only has 2 or 3 Roman sites on his network of aligned sites. Of course, normally they're later than the prehistoric sites that he's looking for. But this one is particularly interesting because of the earlier fort connections and the fact that it was probably the Druid sanctuary of Medionemeton, as Harry demonstrates. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that old like button and subscribe if you want to be notified of more videos. And check out the main website at glasgowssecretgeometry.uk. There's a link in the description and at the end of the video. So see you next time on Glasgow Secret Geometry.